worked pretty well for a whole generation. Now, anything that works well for a whole generation isn't entirely bad. From that fact, and the undeniable fact that things are working poorly now, are we to conclude that the Keynesian sort of mixed regulation was wrong,
yes,
or alternatively that we need still more regulation? That's my conclusion, I might say.
You want the right people manipulating the levers. But go back. Memory smooths things out. If you really look at that 25-year period you're talking about, it was not a period of stability. It was a period that was punctuated by the very sharp inflation of the Korean War. It was a period that was punctuated by 3 recessions in the course of about 8 years in the 50s and early 60s. It was a period in which you had inflation really starting to go from creeping to running in the latter 60s. It was a period which laid the groundwork for the kind of situation in which we are now, where you have both higher unemployment and higher inflation. It was
I mean, there were these movements, as we say, but they weren't the movements like the 1930s. There was a recession in 58. Yes, we all called it a recession. We all worried about it and so on. But it was a small thing, little potatoes.
The same thing was true in earlier periods between the Great Depressions. If you take the area between the Great Depression in the United States of the 1870s and the 1890s, again, you had a period like that. If you take it between the Great Depression of the 1890s and World War I, with one minor exception, it was similar to that. So that what you have, and this is a historical fact, is that except for the Great Depressions, all of which are linked to monetary collapses and to governmental involvement, in the interim period, the society has been reasonably stable.
Have we reached a stage, incidentally, where we need not again see anything like the Great Depression? You say recessions, yes, but it bears no relationship to what we knew in the 30s. Have we solved that problem now? People are deeply...
No, I don't think we have, because I think the seeds of it remain there. I don't agree with Professor Lukachman that everything was, I don't want to misparaphrase him, but did pretty well until 1973 and it suddenly all went wrong. It seems to me that the seeds of the subsequent instability, stagflation, were there before. That each time round the economic cycle, inflation went a little faster. Each time round the economic cycle, unemployment tended to be a bit higher. But this brings me to what is my disagreement with Professor Friedman. I agree with him that government has failed to correct, and is bound to fail to correct, that instability. I do not agree with him that it is the root cause of that instability, or that simply removing or containing the government will remove that instability. Because his constitution, and I agree with all the things he wants to put into it, but I want to put more into it, leaves big capital entirely free to operate. Now, he doesn't mind that. In response to big capital, you are bound to get, as a simple natural reaction, big labor. He doesn't mind that. He's quite happy with that. But my contention is that once you have big labor, you have a way of setting rewards in society, not only by trade unions, but through all sorts of other processes whereby groups get together in order to exploit the political process and legal rights and to protect themselves from competition, in which inevitably people set rewards above what economists call the market clearing price for labor, i.e. they set levels of reward which make it impossible that everybody should be employed. You therefore have a built-in tendency to high unemployment. If governments react to that on the Keynesian pattern by trying to inject spending which will enable these people to be employed, then I agree with Professor Friedman that all you get is faster and faster inflation, and that, if you like, is caused by the government. But the government is a proximate cause of an original instability that is already there, and there's nothing in Professor Friedman's constitution which would correct that inherent, if you like, contradiction or flaw in classical Western political economy.
Do you deny, Peter, no, I want to ask just one question of Peter. Do you deny that big government plays a large part in the rise of big capital and big labor?
I think they're interactive. I once said big capital causes big labor, causes big government, causes big failure. And that is the tragic story, in my opinion, of the 20th century. We have to unravel that.
If you start that route with big government, will it be wrong? Big government causes big capital, causes big labor, causes big failure.
I don't think historically that's what's happened. But you and I are agreed we don't want big government.
That's right.
What we're disagreed about is what else we need.
I think something is seriously wrong with a beautiful system which develops this big, clumsy, aggressive government, huge corporations with more influence over their markets than is desirable from the standpoint of free competitive theory, trade unions, which at least according to some opinions have a similarly malignant influence on their markets. There must be something radically flawed with a capitalist system which allows these institutional developments. This doesn't alarm me because I'm a socialist, but I would readily...
There must be something radically wrong with the socialist philosophy which allows the the extraordinary, the much worse developments that have occurred wherever there has been any real significant attempt to put a thoroughgoing socialism into practice.
Socialism is a word of many meanings.
Now, I think we might easily get into a quite separate debate.
Right.
I think it's possible to note in passing that they may both be right, that conventional capitalism, conventional socialism as conceived in the 20th century are both wrong, and that the polarization of the debate between those simple two alternatives greatly impoverishes the real range of political economic choices which modern societies have.
But what has happened? Over and over again, one claim after another for the kind of socialism, this kind of socialism or that kind of socialism, has turned to ashes. And each time, the answer has come, oh, well, it was a wrong brand of socialism that was adopted, or the wrong people were running it.
But you're saying an argument yourself, Milton.
No, I'm not.
The Federal Reserve in 1929 failed to do the right thing. It was the wrong brand of capitalism.
It was a wrong brand, absolutely, but what I'm saying is something different. I can at least point to examples in history of systems, of capitalist systems, in which the government had a fairly limited role, not my ideal government. Many things doing many things I would not want it to do. But I'm going to point to such examples of long stretches of history in which have been relatively successful, where the major achievements of humankind, not merely in economics, but in all other areas, have largely arisen. It is very difficult to point to any similar examples of where big government has achieved such success.
But you said before you didn't like to go back. You're now talking about going back.
No,
These
no,
took place
I
at
didn't say I
different
didn't like to
times.
go back. What I said is going back or forward is irrelevant. What we want to
but
do
it's
is the
not
right thing
irrelevant to
wherever
this
it comes
discussion
from.
because, as Bob Lukacsman said earlier, things have increased in scale, and the scale of business has increased. And you were saying just before, big government, big labor, big industry, big firms go together, and you didn't accept it before. When Bob said you accept it now from here.
No, I don't accept it. What I accept is that big government is a major factor promoting big labor and big capital. I did not accept that in the absence of big government, you would have the big capital and big labor that worries him.